Maria Alvarez had never known an easy day in her life. Born in a small rural village in the southern mountains of Ecuador, she was the eldest of 6 children. Her father worked the fields, and her mother tended to the house and garden, often barefoot and worn out by the end of the day. Maria learned early what work meant, not just the kind that hurt your back, but the kind that carved your spirit and tested your will. By the time she was 10, she was waking before dawn to help her mother make breakfast, warm corn tortillas and coffee, and then walk her siblings to school. The dusty trail wound around hillsides and over a rickety wooden bridge that trembled in the rain. School was not guaranteed for girls in her village, but Maria was clever. She convinced the local teacher to let her stay in the back of the classroom, just to listen. By 14, she was top of the class. Still, education was a luxury. At 16, after her father's health began to fail, Maria took a job cleaning houses in the nearby town. She would leave at sunrise, walk 2 hours down the mountain path, work for 10 hours, and return in the dark, always bringing home bread, oil, and a smile that belied her exhaustion. She had dreams, though she spoke them only to the moon. One of those dreams took root the day her employer, a retired teacher named Señora Castillo, left a book on the kitchen counter. Maria stole glances at the pages during her lunch breaks, a Spanish translation of Little Women. Something about Joe March, writing by candlelight, caught fire in her. "You're always reading," Señora Castillo once said, sipping her tea. "Why don't you go back to school?" Maria looked down. "There's no time. And I need to earn." But Señora Castillo was persistent. She paid Maria a little extra each week and brought her notebooks, pens, and textbooks. "Work will always be there," she said. "But you have something rare, a hunger for more." By 20, Maria earned her high school diploma through night classes. By 23, she had moved to the city, enrolled in a community college, and found work as a waitress. It was a hard life. She lived in a shared apartment with 3 other women, often sleeping on a mattress on the floor. She studied during her breaks and scribbled notes while standing on buses. There were times she wanted to quit, like the week her mother fell ill and she had to send all her savings home. Or when a customer humiliated her for her accent. Or when she failed her accounting exam and sat on the steps outside the campus, shivering in the rain. But she didn't quit. Instead, she reminded herself of who she was, a daughter of the mountains, a girl who could climb anything. By 27, Maria graduated with a degree in business administration. She got an internship with a small logistics company, where she worked 12-hour days but absorbed everything: inventory systems, spreadsheets, customer service. The manager noticed her drive and promoted her within the year. And she didn't stop there. She saved, penny by penny, and eventually started a small business of her own, a delivery service catering to rural areas where larger companies wouldn't go. She hired local women, many single mothers, and paid them fairly. Her company grew slowly but steadily, delivering more than just goods. It delivered dignity, opportunity, and change. 10 years later, at a conference for rural development in Quito, Maria Alvarez stood on stage before hundreds of people. Her hair was neatly tied back, her voice firm but gentle. She spoke about barriers and bridges, about building businesses from broken beginnings, and about how the hands that once scrubbed floors had built a future. Afterward, a young girl approached her shyly, clutching a worn notebook. "I want to be like you," she whispered. Maria smiled. She recognized the same spark she'd once seen in her own reflection. "You already are," she said. "You just have to keep going."
The first time Maria met Javier, she had just pulled off to the side of the road, her old pickup truck hissing and leaning slightly to the left. The tire was ruined, shredded along the edge like it had been chewed by wolves. She was tired, flustered, and already 20 minutes late for a meeting with her new employer. Her dream job. The job she fought hard for after months of rejection emails and interviews that led nowhere. And then came Javier. Not in shining armor, but in jeans stained with grease and a loose white t-shirt that had seen better days. He had pulled over behind her without a word, walked up, and offered help without the usual condescension she was used to. He didn't even ask if she could handle it herself, just knelt down and got to work. That was 6 months ago. Now, Maria sat in her small but sunlit apartment, staring at the clock ticking past 7:15 p.m., waiting for Javier to arrive. The scent of arroz con pollo lingered in the kitchen, and she had finally figured out how to make the rice just the way his mother did, tender with a touch of garlic and saffron. Javier had become more than a roadside savior. He became a constant. Someone who checked on her during her late nights at the office, who listened when she vented about the growing pains of her new role as operations coordinator at the logistics company. He didn't just nod along. He gave advice, rooted in the kind of common sense that she admired. He ran a small mechanic shop, owned it with his cousin, and it kept him grounded. Honest work, as he always said. Their relationship didn't start like fireworks. It was more like a fire that refused to go out, even during the windstorms of life. When Maria's mother got sick, it was Javier who drove her 3 hours to the hospital without being asked. When Javier lost a big client at the shop, it was Maria who stayed up late, crunching numbers to help him rework his costs and keep the business afloat. They weren't perfect. Maria had her ambition, sometimes so sharp it cut into their time together. Javier had his pride, which occasionally made him stubborn when she offered help. But they were learning. One night, while walking back from the corner bodega with plantains and a cold bottle of Jarritos, Maria looked at Javier and said, almost absent-mindedly, "You know, if my tire hadn't blown that day, I wouldn't have met you." Javier chuckled, tilting his head with a smirk. "Then I guess I owe the pothole on Route 17 a thank you card." They laughed, and in that laughter was something deeper, recognition. That life, no matter how unpredictable, sometimes hands you exactly what you need when you least expect it. It wasn't long before things started to feel serious. Maria's job was evolving. Her manager had hinted at a promotion, something involving team leadership and site expansion. It would be more hours, more travel, possibly even relocation. When she brought it up to Javier over coffee, his reaction surprised her. "If it's what you want, go for it," he said, without hesitation. "But what if it takes me away?" she asked, unsure. He looked at her, that calm steadiness in his eyes. "Then we find a way. We adjust the alignment, like I do with tires. That's what relationships are. They need tuning now and then." That night, she cried, not out of sadness, but because she realized she had someone who saw her, not just loved her. They began talking more seriously about the future. Not in grand, dramatic terms, but in quiet, real ways. Shared leases. Joint accounts. Maybe one day, a shop that combined both their skills, vehicles, and logistics under one roof. They joked about naming it Tires and Wires. Maria still worked hard, sometimes too hard. Javier still came home with oil on his hands and stories about fussy engines. But on weekends, they drive out to the countryside, play old music from Javier's beat-up stereo, and talk about where they were going. And whenever someone asked Maria how they met, she smiled and said, "A flat tire, a missed meeting, and the best wrong turn I ever took." 2 years later, the sign above the small shop just outside Santa Lucia read, "Tires and Wires, Repairs and Logistics." Maria stood at the front desk, clipboard in hand, coordinating a fleet delivery schedule for a new client. Out back, Javier was under the hood of a delivery van, whistling to an old Selena song playing on the shop radio. Business was good. Life was better. On the wall near the entrance hung a framed photo of the two of them, standing beside her old pickup truck, the same one that had broken down that fateful day. The caption below it read, "It all started with a flat tire." And every time Maria looked at it, she was reminded, sometimes the things that go wrong are just life's way of setting something right. On a quiet Sunday morning, Maria and Javier sat on the porch of their little home behind the shop, sharing coffee as the sun crept over the hills. A tiny pair of boots sat beside the door, too small for either of them. Inside, a baby monitor crackled softly. Maria leaned her head on Javier's shoulder and smiled. "Can you believe all this started with a flat tire?" Javier chuckled. "Best roadside breakdown of my life." The world beyond their porch still moved fast, but here, in this moment, Everything was exactly where it needed to be.